everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Positive Proof Podcast. I'm your host, Parmis, and I'm so glad that you're here. If you want to listen to more episodes like this one on self-improvement, mindset, and wellness, go ahead and hit that follow button to join the family. I want to start off by thanking everyone who has been tuning in since the relaunch back in January. I have received so many touching messages from you guys telling me how much my episodes have helped you, and I cannot express how happy that makes me. I record these episodes truly from the heart with literally no other motive in mind other than to help you guys. So it really means the world to me when I hear your guys' feedback, and it really pushes me to continue. Also, shout out to the cities that made it to my top 5. You guys are killing it. We have my city at number 1, finally, Toronto. And then another Canadian city finally made it to the top 5, and that's Montreal at number 2. Followed by Dallas and Houston, Texas at number 3 and number 4, and then finally Phoenix, Arizona at number 5. I love you guys so much, and I think it's so cool that you guys are tuning in from all around the world. So keep sharing the podcast to friends and family in your circle so we can make this show even bigger and spread the positive impact that we make. Now, if you're anything like me, you've gone down a million rabbit holes trying to figure out the secret to happiness, self-help books, meditation apps, motivational videos, you name it. And maybe some of those things helped, but there's still that nagging question, why am I still not content? So today I want to share some perspectives that aren't the usual advice. Instead, I want to start with a broader foundation, distinguishing pleasure from fulfillment. And then I want to jump into 5 lesser talked about reasons you might be stuck in a cycle of dissatisfaction. So let's get right into it. Before we talk about why you might not be happy, we really need to pin down what happiness even is. For me, that starts with making a really clear distinction between pleasure and fulfillment. Pleasure is that rush you get in the moment. Think of it as quick hits of positive sensation, like when you eat delicious dessert or book your next trip or you buy a new bag or laugh at a funny meme or you scroll through social media. Pleasure is like striking a match, a really bright flash, a brief flame, and then it's over. Fulfillment, on the other hand, is more like tending a warm fire that keeps you comfortable through the night. It's a deeper sense of satisfaction that sticks around even when life throws stressors your way. Fulfillment comes from things like living in alignment with your values, caring relationships, creative expression, or the steady growth you experience as a human being. It's not fleeting, it's cumulative. You build it over time. And here's where we often stumble. It's tempting to rely on small bursts of pleasure, those matches flaring up to feel happy. We chase after what's new, exciting, or distracting in hopes that it'll bring us that elusive sense of well-being. But even when we piece together a string of pleasurable moments, we still notice something missing in the background. And that's the gap between momentary excitement and sustained fulfillment. So the real question is, what is holding you back from that deeper, more lasting state? Of course, every individual is different, and you might be dealing with factors like mental health issues or systemic barriers or a tough life circumstance. But in this conversation, I want to highlight 5 less obvious patterns that often sneak up on us. These are patterns that, when unaddressed, can keep you feeling restless and undersatisfied, even if you're doing all the quote-unquote right things. So let's jump right in. One reason you might not be happy, something we rarely talk about in depth, is the sheer amount of information you're processing every day. We live in an age of relentless notifications, endless content, and infinite scrolling. Sure, the internet is incredible. It's given us access to any piece of information at a moment's notice. It's given me a part-time job, but it's also become this swirling sea of data that can leave your brain cluttered and constantly buzzing. Now, what does mental overload look like? It's when you can't remember the last time you just sat quietly without picking up your phone. It's when every spare moment, waiting in line at a coffee shop, sitting in the passenger seat of a car, or even taking a break in the bathroom becomes an opportunity to check messages, read headlines, or skim through social feeds. Over time, this erodes your mental spaciousness. You're never alone with your thoughts. You're never truly present because there's always another wave of digital input coming your way. And so why does this erode happiness? Well, happiness often depends on your ability to be fully engaged in the present. Real contentment arises from noticing what's going on within and around you, not from constantly bouncing between multiple bits of information. When your mind is overloaded, you probably experience a sense of constant anxiety because you're subconsciously bracing for the next ping or notification, which keeps your nervous system in a low-level fight or flight mode. Or 2, you have trouble making decisions. You're overwhelmed by options and opinions, unable to trust your own instincts because there's always more data to consider. Or 3, you have difficulty savoring simple joys. It's hard to appreciate a nice meal or a conversation with a friend if your mind is half occupied by digital noise. Now, to break out of this, you don't necessarily have to throw your smartphone in a lake. Instead, try conscious consumption. Intentionally limit the times you browse the internet or set boundaries around notifications. For example, turn off push notifications for non-essential apps. Give yourself small pockets of uninterrupted focus during the day. Time where you're fully present in whatever you're doing, whether that's writing, talking to someone, or simply daydreaming. I personally love daydreaming. Being present means engaging your 5 senses and acknowledging them. Like, for example, if you're waiting in line, take the time to notice everything going on around you. Let your mind wander. Let your brain pick up on small details of life that you may have not noticed if you were occupied with your phone. It might feel uncomfortable at first, like you're missing out or not being productive, but if you commit to creating these little pockets of mental silence, you might find a sense of clarity that you haven't felt in a while. And when your mind has room to breathe, you can better identify your genuine emotions, desires, and needs. And that clarity becomes fertile ground for building true fulfillment. I remember every time I used to sit at dinner or sit passenger, I was always on my phone, looking for every opportunity to either catch up on work or catch up on friends' lives through social feeds. And ever since I met my boyfriend, who is not so glued to his phone whatsoever, he has taught me that really it is such a shame and so sad to be sitting next to a loved one, to then decide to put your attention towards a digital screen rather than enjoy the presence of your partner or spark a conversation with them. And naturally, over time, it became a norm for me to not reach for my phone the second we got in the car or sat at dinner. And even in those times when there is nothing to talk about, we just sit still. We enjoy what's around us in the most blissful way possible. Now, that's not to say I never pull out my phone to take pictures of food or send a text message that needs to be sent, but I can say that 80% of the time, I avoid my phone when I'm with family, friends, or my partner. And I will continuously work on that to make it 100% because I think it's so important to put your attention towards what's around you and live in the present rather than shove your head into your phone because you can't stand the thought of sitting still and doing nothing. So shout out to my lovely partner, Dara, for teaching me this, not verbally, but through his actions. It's truly made such a difference in our lives and in our relationship. Okay, point number 2, the illusion of escapism travel. You know when people say, I'll be happy when? Maybe you can relate. I've said it before, as I'm sure we all have. Maybe not out loud, but in our heads. We see these gorgeous travel photos on social media, and it's easy to believe that hopping on a plane and heading somewhere far away will magically cure all the sadness, anxiety, or restlessness we feel at home. But here's the catch. You can't escape from yourself. Wherever you go, you're still you, with all the same emotional baggage, the same insecurities, and the same frustrations. If you're feeling unfulfilled in your everyday life, traveling can temporarily distract you, sure. You might get that rush of excitement from being in a new environment or tasting different foods, meeting new people, or simply not having to worry about your usual daily stresses for a bit. But once the novelty wears off, or once you return home, the internal issues remain. So the real question isn't where can I travel so I can be happier? It's what is missing in my everyday life that is making me so eager to escape? It might be that you feel trapped in a job that doesn't align with your values. Maybe you've got unresolved relationship tensions, like with a partner or even with yourself. Or possibly you're facing a lack of direction. You're not sure why you're doing the things you're doing. When you identify those root causes, you can address them directly. Travel becomes an enjoyable addition rather than escape hatch then. I'm not saying you should never travel. I actually think travel can be an amazing experience that broadens your perspective and helps you grow, but it needs to be done for the right reasons. Curiosity, a genuine desire to explore different cultures, the excitement of seeing new places, not just to avoid your day-to-day. And that's the thing about avoidance. It always catches up to you. So if you're throwing money at flights and hotels in the hopes that you'll magically come back an entirely new person, I'm here to gently remind you that it's an inside job. You're going to have to do the heavy lifting sooner or later. And later usually comes with compounded stress. So I'd suggest you start now. I myself was the person who thought traveling 6 times a year would be the key to happiness. But the more I spent time really curating how I wanted my life to look like, the more I fell in love with my routine, the more that I fell in love with recording podcasts for a good cause, or the more I invested into my relationships and passion projects, the more I realized that I don't need to be traveling that often to be happy, nor do I want to. I'm happy here where I am. I'm happy at home. I put my focus here. And so thinking and planning about my next trip becomes so much more of a fulfilling process because I'm no longer booking it to escape something or to take a break from how tiring life is. I book it as a pure bonus experience in life. So the takeaway to all this is if you're not at peace with your life and yourself, traveling won't automatically fix that. It might give you a temporary sense of excitement or relief, but real happiness is something you bring with you, not something you find in a new place. So yes, travel, explore, have adventures, but do it because you're curious and alive, not because you're running away from yourself. Moving on to point number 3. In our culture, there's a ton of emphasis on self-improvement. Be more productive, more positive, more mindful, more successful, more everything. And don't get me wrong, growth is a beautiful thing. Learning new skills, developing emotional resilience, or working out to be healthier can all contribute to a more fulfilling life. But the trap is when self-improvement becomes a treadmill that you can't get off. And I'm not saying you should stop listening to the Positive Proof podcast, but I'm saying to do everything with balance. Here's how it often goes. You read a new book or follow a new guru who promises that if you just adopt this next habit, for example, doing an ice bath or sauna every day, journal for 30 minutes, then run a marathon before breakfast, that you're going to unlock the happiness you've been missing. And you might jump with excitement and maybe you'll see some results, but eventually you're going to realize you're not fully satisfied yet. So you figure you must not be doing enough and you look for the next new hack, technique, or lifestyle tweak. Rinse and repeat. It's an endless pursuit of a better you under the assumption that your present self is inherently lacking. Now, why can this stunt your happiness? Because if you're always chasing the horizon of a future perfect version of yourself, you are never able to appreciate who you are right now. You begin to tie your sense of worth to your progress. And if you have a bad day or skip a workout, you feel guilty or worthless. And you might start to see every day as just another test of your ability to level up rather than a day you get to live and experience. Yes, personal growth can enhance happiness if done with balance. But if you never pause to acknowledge how far you've come or to embrace the person you are at each stage, it morphs into a never-ending climb up a mountain with no summit in sight. You're always fixated on not there yet, which translates into not happy yet. So maybe the antidote is to allow yourself some breathing room. Set a finite goal, something that resonates with your values, and work diligently towards it. But build in moments of rest and self-acceptance. Let yourself exist in a space where you're not trying to improve anything, but simply noticing what's going well. This might mean indulging in a hobby without trying to monetize it, or practicing an activity purely for the joy of it, not because it'll check off another item on your self-development list. You might discover that your real contentment arises when you're engaged in life without constantly measuring your output or scanning for flaws to fix. Growth is amazing. Evolving is part of being human. But peace, that underlying sense of well-being, emerges when you realize you're already whole, even as you continue to learn and expand. It's not about giving up on personal development. It's about recognizing that you're not broken while you do it. And the reason people resist true rest is that it can be surprisingly uncomfortable. If you're used to constant stimulation, when your mind quiets down, unresolved thoughts and feelings can bubble up. You might experience a pang of guilt, worrying you're not being productive enough. But ironically, by never giving yourself full permission to rest, you end up in a cycle of permanent exhaustion, a state that undermines happiness on every single level. Moving on to point number 4, the fleeting rush of buying stuff. Let's be real. We've all had that moment where hitting add to cart just feels so good. And I am there with you. I love shopping. There's almost an addictive rush when you see a package on the doorstep, and part of you believes, maybe unconsciously, that this shiny new thing will be a missing piece to your happiness puzzle. I mean, marketing is basically designed to make you think that every product is the key to a more fulfilled existence. Believe me, I know I work in marketing, but we all know deep down that it's incredibly temporary. The high from a new purchase might last a day, a week, or even a month, but sooner or later it dissolves. Why? Because we adapt. Human beings are unbelievably adaptable creatures. What feels like the most exciting phone, car, pair of shoes, or gadget eventually becomes the new normal in your life. And then what happens? You either start eyeing the next best thing, or you realize you still feel a sense of emptiness you can't quite shake. Now, this isn't to say that buying things is evil or that wanting nice things makes you a bad person. It's about intention. Are you buying something because it genuinely improves the quality of your life, or because you're chasing a quick dopamine hit? And let's be honest, those hits can be so alluring. Sometimes you're stressed out or sad and you want to feel better, so you whip out your credit card. It's like trying to fill an emotional void with stuff, and the void often stems from a lack of connection, purpose, or self-love. What complicates matters is the culture we live in. We are bombarded with ads and social media posts showcasing perfect lifestyles. It's easy to believe that if we just had that outfit or that gadget or that furniture set, that we'd finally reach the happiness level these glamorous people appear to have. But that's just it. It's an appearance, not the reality. Most people on social media don't post about their darkest moments or their insecurities or their unhappiness. They post the highlights, so you see them with brand new things looking thrilled. But there's a big gap between how people act on social media and what the real emotional world looks like. If you're continuously chasing the next thing to buy, you might not be taking the time to address the root cause of your unhappiness. Are you lacking intimacy in your friendships or romantic relationships? Are you feeling stagnant in your personal or professional growth? Do you wake up dreading the day because you're not doing something that aligns with your passions? These are the questions that really matter. No Amazon purchase or expensive shopping spree can answer that for you. So if you find yourself constantly looking for retail therapy to make you happy, pause and check in with yourself. Ask, am I bored, stressed, or sad about something? Is this purchase actually going to fix that? Usually the answer is no. So I want the takeaway to be the fact that buying stuff can offer a fleeting pleasure, like a sugar rush, but for real fulfillment, consider turning inward and figuring out what deeper emotional needs aren't being met. Once you start fulfilling those needs, you'll find that shopping becomes a fun but not essential part of your happiness. Moving on to the last point, we're going to talk about something a bit more introspective, which is the idea that sometimes the reason we're not happy is that we haven't taken the time or summoned the courage to get really honest with ourselves. It's so much easier to look for external fixes like traveling, shopping, or chasing compliments than it is to sit down with ourselves and say, okay, what's really going on here? We avoid the deeper work of self-awareness. Self-awareness is both liberating and terrifying. It requires you to look at the parts of your life that you're not really proud of, or the aspects of your personality that might be sabotaging your happiness. It involves asking tough questions like, am I surrounding myself with people who genuinely uplift me? Am I in a career or a lifestyle that actually resonates with my core values? Or am I just following someone else's script for success? Do my daily habits reflect the kind of person I want to be? Sometimes we avoid this introspection because we sense that it might require changes we're not ready to make. For instance, if you realize that your job is draining your soul, you might have to consider changing careers or going back to school or taking a financial risk, which can be scary. Or if you become aware that a certain close friendship or romantic relationship is unhealthy, you might have to consider setting boundaries or even walking away. These decisions are huge and often come with a lot of fear, uncertainty, and guilt. So it's often more comfortable to pretend everything is fine and keep going through the motions, even if those motions keep you stuck and unhappy. But here's the deal. Self-awareness is the first step towards real growth. Without it, you're just shooting in the dark hoping that the next external fix will do the trick. And one crucial aspect is if you realize something is out of alignment, maybe your job, relationship, or lifestyle, don't rush to overhaul everything in one go. Sometimes you need small, incremental changes. For instance, if you hate your job but can't afford to quit, Maybe you can start exploring your passions on the side, pick up a course, dabble in the side hustle, or connect with people in a field you're curious about. Build momentum slowly. Over time, you'll either create a solid plan to transition or realize that certain small tweaks can make your current situation more tolerable or even more enjoyable. What's important is that you address the root of your unhappiness rather than plastering it over with band-aid solutions. And that root might be a sense of unfulfilled potential, an unresolved trauma, or simply the fact that you've never really defined what happiness means to you personally. It could also be that you're carrying around a lot of shame or guilt that's never been fully processed. Recognizing these issues might feel daunting, but it's the only way to truly move forward. You can't fix what you won't face. So I want the takeaway from this to be that deep happiness often requires deep self-awareness. It's uncomfortable to examine your life critically and realize certain changes are necessary, but avoiding this work is usually what keeps you stuck in perpetual dissatisfaction. When you face yourself honestly, you gain the power to make shifts, big and small, and that paves the way for genuine contentment. So we've talked about 5 key points. Number 1 being mental overload. Number 2, the illusion of escapism travel. Number 3, self-improvement treadmill. Number 4, the fleeting rush of buying stuff. And number 5, avoiding the deeper work of self-awareness. You might be thinking, okay, so do I just focus on these 5 areas and magically become happy? Not exactly. Real life isn't that straightforward, but recognizing these hidden patterns gives you a new lens. When you find yourself mindlessly scrolling at midnight, ask, am I avoiding rest? Do I feel uneasy about stillness? When your schedule is packed, ask, have I aligned any of these activities with what I truly value? Or am I just keeping busy for the sake of it? Over time, these questions become a natural part of your self-awareness. You start catching yourself before you tumble into the same traps. And that's where the magic happens. Happiness isn't one epic solution. It is a series of small course corrections that keep you in alignment with what genuinely nourishes you. So as we wrap up, let me just say that no single step or tip is going to wave a wand and make you happy forever. But each step taken consciously, each moment of self-awareness, each bit of rest you allow yourself, that's building the foundation for a more authentic sense of well-being. And authenticity is key here. You want a happiness that's truly yours, not based on someone else's definition or some passing societal standard. If there's one thing I hope you take away from this entire conversation, is that happiness doesn't have to be a dramatic quest. Often it's the quieter choices, the choice to put the phone down, the choice to gently say no, the choice to ease up on the self-criticism, the choice to enjoy a tiny slice of life that usually goes unnoticed. These choices, repeated often enough, create a life that feels more grounded and more at ease. Happiness isn't reserved for a chosen few. It's a state of being that stems from living in harmony with your values, regularly practicing gratitude, forming meaningful connections, and taking responsibility for your life. It's also about being gentle with yourself. You're allowed to stumble. You're allowed to change your mind. You're allowed to grow at a pace that might be slower or faster than those around you. In fact, you get to define all of this on your own terms. So here's to making space in a cluttered world, reclaiming time in a busy schedule, accepting ourselves on this endless journey, noticing the overlooked beauty of our routines, and resting deeply so we can show up as our best, most relaxed selves. I hope some part of it clicks with you. Maybe it'll spark a small shift or give you a fresh perspective. At the very least, I hope it reminds you that you're not alone in questioning why genuine happiness can feel elusive, and that you absolutely have the capacity to rewrite that story in ways that resonate with who you truly are. But that is a wrap. I do hope you guys enjoyed today's episode, and if you did, please leave a review. Your feedback means so much to me. The more people this podcast reaches, the bigger the positive impact we make, so I'd love it if you could do that for me. Also, if you guys have any recommendations as to what you'd like me to talk about in future episodes, definitely let me know, because I'm 100% open to recording what you guys want to hear. And if you don't know yet, I do monthly giveaways where a random person will be selected from those of you who did leave a review. The written reviews can be done over on Apple Podcasts, and the ratings can be done on Spotify. Just send me a screenshot once you've done so and you'll be eligible to win. The winner will be announced on Instagram at Positive Proof Podcast. And if you want an extra entry into the giveaway, make sure to share this podcast or episode via socials and tag me at Parmis Najmi and again at Positive Proof Podcast on Instagram. To everyone else, if you've made it this far, I appreciate you so, so much. And I can't wait to chat with you again in next week's episode. Lots of love, Parmis.